Nobody asked for it, but you're gonna get it anyway. Hey everybody, welcome back to another tier list where I'm gonna rank all the nations, all the coalitions, and even NATO and Pact specifically. First and foremost, I'm gonna divide this into team. You can see it at the top here in the S tier, team and 1 versus 1. And I'm not gonna, especially when it comes to Pact and NATO, I'm not gonna rank specifically mech and mod or something. I'm just gonna assume the strongest version of the deck. For NATO and Pact, this would probably be mech, especially for Pact. NATO, depending on the map, Modo might also be better. And generally speaking, very often it's unspec. Entente, probably mech, but you get the point. I'm gonna try to do this quickly, so don't expect this to be very in-depth, okay? And by doing it quickly, I might rank them a bit higher or a bit lower than I would do if I were to think about it longer, but it's 35 decks to rank times 2, team and 1 versus 1. So I'll try to do this quickly. So once more, do not expect this to be very in-depth. If you want something in-depth, look at my coalition reviews and whatnot. So we're gonna do 1 versus 1 first, and then team games. We're gonna do it alphabetically. ANZAC. Actually, we need another tier. Let me come back in a sec. Okay, we're back. I think we need a few more tiers here. So because ANZAC isn't actually that horrible compared to many other minor nations, it's actually relatively viable in 1 versus 1s. A's 1 pluses and Vickers are good, Commandos 90 are great. You have some acceptable AA, you have some really good bombers. This doesn't mean it's like really high, but I think a lot stronger than people might think it is, because it's always like, ANZAC, you don't have anything, but it has a lot of it fills a lot of basics actually. Like you have good shock infantry, decent AA, mortars, good anti-gem plane, good bomber, so it's actually not that horrible. But given the competition, really not that high. Blue Dragons, it got buffed a bit, but probably still solid B tier. I might come back to this later. Baltic Front is honestly still A tier despite the nerfs. Canada, it is quite lacking. I'm gonna put in D tier for now. China might actually be C tier. It's not that much worse, arguably better than Red Dragons. Commonwealth, B tier. Got some nice buffs. Czechoslovakia, also C tier. Modernas are good. TS-72 M1Ms are good. You have Mortar. Kub M4 and OSAS, you have some solid AA. MiG-23 MLs, ASFs. MiG-29 bombers are good. SU-25K, not amazing, but it's serviceable. You have some Heinz. Acceptable infantry. No real major holes. It's very much like Isamlog, which is kind of like Jack of all trades but master of none, but another 1 or 2 levels below that. But still, it fills more or less every gap, just most of them not particularly well. Denmark, you can meme a lot with it, but you're still gonna struggle. It's very similar to ANZAC, where it's a kind of in a limbo between C and D, I think. The automatic is gonna do a lot of heavy lifting, and the availability bonus helps. Dutch German coalition is still very much B tier. Could maybe even be A tier. Unsure. It also got hit a good bit by the Tiger nerf, of course. Eastern Bloc, definitely A tier, potentially S. Gonna come back to that later. BMP1, obviously a very huge buff. LSTR are amazing. You still have solid tanks, solid planes. Again, like I said, Jack of all trades, but master of none. Eurocore, I'd say is. I think I'm gonna order these in like the furthest left is the strongest in the individual tier. Eurocore might still be very low A tier or very high B tier. A lot of people are still playing it, but I think that's mostly just out of convenience and out of being used to it. It is still very solid. Like you still have Legion 90, which are incredibly strong. Rima 85 are very good. AMX 10 is still fine, right? Leopard 2A1 is a much better tank than it was before, because all the competition got nerfed a bit, right? Leclerc got nerfed though, right? So it's hard to say. East Germany might be like very low B tier actually. You still have all the groundwork, all the basics that Eastern Bloc really builds upon. BMP1s, LSTR 40. You still have very strong. You have the Osa line, you have the Taurus, you have the Tunguska. You don't have a 9 HE, like a high-end 9 HE AA piece, but it's not a big deal. You still have a 5 HE motor, you have T72S. The T72M1 isn't as great, but it's better than the other T72M1s that are in the game. You have some acceptable planes. A HM plane isn't great, but you still have a decent ASF. You have a good seat plane, you have the Lasur, you have Heinz, you have a decent bomber. Regentab isn't horrible, Spezialauflehrer are nice. That's more or less it, right? But the infantry tab is going to do the heavy lifting here. And the availability bonus, especially with Modrits and LSCR, very, very, very nice. Entente S tier, especially mech, possibly the strongest deck at the moment. Uncertain. Finland also very much B tier, still. Probably very low B tier, but B tier. France as well. France isn't really that different from Eurocore. Recon Tiger and Peace Run, even before the nerfs, right? Recon Tiger, Peace Run, KWS, absolutely amazing, especially the KWS, which is of course still unchanged. In my eyes, the best ASF card in the game. But you still have Legionnaire, you have the Leclerc, you have the Amex 10s, you still have the Helicopter Tab Tigers, which, especially now with the Tiger nerf, arguably better than a Recon Tab, or like, no, not really worth. The Recon Tiger might not even be worth running anymore in some eyes. Infantry Tab is, some people don't even run the Marder 2 in Eurocore, so the Infantry Tab would potentially be the same. And with the availability bonus, getting more Leech 90 is quite nice. Israel, given that it got only a bit nerfed, but a lot of them, especially moto-wise, right? Baltic Front and Eurocore got nerfed. Certainly a bit up. And it's out of all the like really high tier HEMR systems, the Mar 290 is the only one unchanged, I believe. Japan, very solid C tier. Land should B tier, somewhere there. This should probably be up. Probably, honestly, I'd say Dutch Germany might be stronger than Eurocore. NATO, probably S tier, despite me being absolutely horrible with mech. But 2 mech is still gonna be balls. North Korea national is also not that horrible. I'll probably have to change this up a bit. Definitely something deserve to be E tier. Dutch, very much on the level here. NORAD, weaker than US, but honestly still A tier. Norway might honestly be weaker than all of those. The infantry tab is fine. Tank tab is not so great. Better than Denmark, sure. But the support tab is going to be really lacking. You have NASAMS, you have NOAA, okay, but it's going to be very squishy, very inflexible versus AA. You can some Fighting Falcons. But hold on, let's just. I mean, the infantry tab is like Fight Coming 90, amazing. Gewehrman, really good. You have the CV90. RBS are okay man pads. Again, these are decent and the plane pieces, but with helicopters you're gonna struggle. Tanks, the 105, and you get the M48A1 now. That is true. Recon type is horrendous. Vehicle type, we don't get anything particular. Helicopter type is empty, and it's probably not that bad. Not as bad as I thought it was. I'm gonna come back to these. Maybe I'm gonna D-rank something to eat. Probably Canada out of any. Pact, S tier as well. Pact mech, very strong. Poland, honestly, very high D tier maybe. The tank type is actually very good for a minor or mid-tier nation. 240 is good. Both of the wilds are great. You still get a T72S on top of that. Basic T72 is pretty good now. Spadochroniarze are decent infantry. You actually have good spam infantry as well with the Topaz 2 armor, right? And RPG 7. You have a Syria, which is good. You have a seat plane, a very good ASF. It's the mortar that holds it back, but you don't need to use mortar plus 20. Like mortar plus like very heavy tank. And as I did in a deck review recently, especially against like when it comes to smoking towns with 80 gems in them, heavy artillery should do fine. Red Dragons, probably C tier. I don't see it being much higher. Scandi. Honestly, very high A tier. Very similar to Israel. It got massively helped by all the motor decks being many of the motor decks being quite heavily nerfed, which is one of the things it struggled most against. The deck itself, I don't know if it got any nerf, but if there were nerfs, they were very insignificant. And Scandi was already very solid. So, assuming that, just for the sake of your argument, Scandi unchanged, all the other top tier decks nerfed, of course, in relative terms, it's gonna be stronger than before. South Korea, K1s are decent. K1 A1 is meh, but you have very good line infantry spam. You don't get ATGMs. The Chumat are Japanese. Might be weaker than Anzac in 1v1s, honestly. South Africa, this is weird. I'm gonna base this on unranked. Because in ranked, it'd probably be like B tier. But in unranked, if you know you're playing against it, this is so. South Africa is such a volatile deck in terms of how well it performs. I'd probably still say low B tier, but like knowing whether it comes or not. Sorry, knowing whether you're gonna play against it or not. Let's phrase it that way. Massively has massive impact on how the matchup goes. Sweden national, very inflexible. Infantry is awkward. Support tab. LVKV90 is great. Tanks can be weird. STB103D especially can be very nice, but if it's your only really decent tank, it also can be very awkward. I think your planes are like you have AMOs, you have PK1C, LVKV, RBSs, especially the former three. Very, very often seen units, but especially in Scandinavia, what it offers is typically some key support units, and I don't mean the support type, but in general. But they're not gonna. Oh, they have 1-1, of course. They're not gonna give you really the fodder or like the main. There's some key units here for Scandi, but not the bread and butter units, if you know what I mean, right? And on its own, in a 1v1, it's very awkward deck, I think, just mainly because infantry is so weird. UK national, very low C tier. Probably still. I'm not afraid to say it. It's worse than Anzac in a 1v1. Legit, I think it might actually be. I think like the infantry awkward. Paratroopers are nice. SAS are very good. Gorgas are okay. Minions are fine. Support tab, sure. Okay, you have good AA. Challenger 2 is good. The Challenger 0 is fine. Chieftain Mark 2 is fine. Mark 5 is okay. These two are garbage. Recon tab. Okay, I might have been. That might have been, even for me, too hot of a take. I don't think it's quite C tier. But honestly, I think it might be worse in Poland. US is S tier, honestly. Also very, very nerfed. Soviets I also think is S tier. A lot of it especially in the main thing with Soviets is if it struggles, it's gonna struggle in the early game most of the time, right? Soviets like to play as long as possible, right? To get stronger as the longer the game goes on. And many of the, like, again, Baltic, Eurocore nerfed. PTRT, Eurogain got nerfed, M8 MTVs got nerfed, right? 2 key units for Soviets. But did I say BTRT or M8 MTV? I meant M8 MTV, in case I didn't say that. But BTRT, VDV90 are still gonna be amazing. Especially against like the decks that you now see more often. They also perform very well. Very good against PvP spam, because PvPs don't do jack shit, so BTRTs. And the VDV90s are just gonna one-shot anything you bring. And they're gonna one-shot a double tap M84 is guaranteed. Very, very good against that. Air spam is like the planes. Plane gameplay is always strong of Soviets, it still is. In fact, Finnish MiG-29 got nerfed, so it's even a bit easier. But you see less Eurocore, which is one of the strongest ASF games in game as well. Also makes it easier for them to gain air superiority. Very, very strong deck still. It was strong before, it's just that it's not very noob friendly. But I think sometimes people overestimate as to how hard it is to play. It is harder to play than most other decks, but I feel like sometimes people have to believe that you have to be a god of the game to play USSR well. It's not that crazy. West Germany. It's a bit. It's. I used to play a lot of West Germany, 1v1s as well, just for fun, and very early in the game, not necessarily for fun, but also, quote unquote seriously. It struggles with like low end infantry, but of course Marder 2 is nice. Leopard 2s are okay. The recon type is not that horrible. The recon infantry is bad, of course, but the looks is cool. Leopard 1 recon can actually work well. Tiger, even in its nerf state, okay. The air type is solid, although of course the Peace Run nerf hurts West Germany the most. And it should be still, honestly, maybe not. I feel like the other decks you have more to offer. I think Japan might actually be the weakest. Infantry games, very, very weak for them. Yugoslavia. Like this. Alright, let's do another pass on this. North Korea, let's put this in the E tier. Not the worst, but I think Canada is the worst. Sweden is also pretty bad. Okay. I think this checks out. What of these, what's the strongest? I think this might be too much of a hot take. I think this is fine. C tier, what's the strongest? China might be weaker than Czechs, I reckon. Dutch. Are the Dutch stronger than Germany? Might be. Tanks are basically equal. Well, no, you got the AMX 13 and the Recon AMX 13 as well. Quite big, Actually, I'm gonna put this like this. The Recon AMX 13 is just so impactful. Infantry is very, very good. We don't have really 80 gems, but that's not really rare for nations like this. Yeah, I think this is fine. B tier. Is Germany stronger than Finland? I would say so. Landshut, Commonwealth, Blue Dragons, Yugoslavia. Norway is probably stronger than Israel. Malta can be a bit lower. I'd say that Eastern Bloc is the Scandi is very strong, but there's still some matchups it doesn't like, right? Or some maps it doesn't like, and that's if there's something. The thing is, Eastern Bloc has generally fairly consistent matchups. I think there's like no deck where it like absolutely sucks against. There's like some maps or like matchups that Scandi doesn't like, but if Scandi doesn't like something, it doesn't like it a lot, right? So these matchups it's really bad at. Whereas in others, it's just really, really good. So quite a volatile matchup you have against this deck, I feel. Nord is essentially weaker US for all intents and purposes. Alright, there's probably some hot takes in there. And again, I did this in a hurry, right? This is in like not even 19 minutes yet, right? So don't take this too serious. Maybe something should be A tier when it's B tier, or B tier when it's A tier, or S tier when it's A tier, blah, 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 right? It's the end of Wargame. Potentially if Warner turns out to be good, so whatever, and look at it that way. If Warner turns out to be bad and I return to Red Dragon, then I can milk this even more by going over it again in detail and then flaming past Razzmann. Right, it's a win-win. Okay, I think I'd say probably this is do it like that for now. All right. Now, team version. All right. ANZAC is pretty bad. Canada. Okay, let's do it. Blue Dragons. I think they're a bit better in lower end games where they can make more use of the ninja and maneuverability. The Q Maru is going to struggle more with his lower armor. So I think Blue Dragons is gonna be overall worse, but still solid. Canada probably gonna perform. Might perform better because of ADATs and such. Baltic. Also, I should mention, right, team games in quote unquote normal team games. What I mean with that is for 2 versus 2 on 2v2 maps, 3v3 on 3v3 maps, and 4v4 on 4v4 maps. This is not for 10v10s because it's just 10v10s are either tactical or like very a ton of points, right? It feels like that at least, right? So it's just very hard to make it, to include that in the same as quote unquote normal team games. And of course, a lot of people, when they play team games, play, let's say, 4v4 on 2v2 Paddy or something like that, or 4v4 on Bloody Ridge, which honestly is more of a 2v2 map, even though it says it's a 3v3, but whatever, right? And I'm not like trying to flame people who play like this. If you play like this and enjoy the game, keep doing it. What I'm saying is, though, that's not what these decks, the maps were designed around really, or play best in at least my mind and most others as well. So I'm not gonna count those. I'm gonna count normal quote unquote, of course, team games, because if you play 4v4 and 2v2 Paddy, of course the deck with a lot of heavy tanks is gonna perform a lot better than a motor deck, because with so many people on the battlefield, you can't really maneuver around well, right? So your motor advantage is next to nil, right? So keep that in mind. Which is why Baltic is still decent. Because if you play 2v2 on Paddy, 2v2 on Bloody Ridge, 2v2 on D-Day, 2v2 on Jungle Law, the speed advantage and motor stuff from Baltic can still be very, very useful. And the tank type is quite solid. Mod isn't the best super heavy, but it's still super heavy, and you get a 20, right? Compare it to let's say, I don't know, Red Dragons, who get 1 super rare card, right? Or two Scandi, which only gets 2 heavy cards. Anyway, China shouldn't be too bad. J7 spam, because you typically can invest a lot more into like a, let's call it like a one-trick pony kind of strategy, because you can rely more on your teammates to fill certain gaps. So J7 bomber spam can still very much work quite well in team games, actually. Commonwealth, actually quite good. Challenger 2s are going to be amazing. The lack of speed, the lack of infantry efficiency, not as much of a problem here. And have quite a strong air power as well. Czechs should be pretty good as well, because they got lots of heavy tanks. Denmark is going to struggle a lot. Automatics are okay. On some maps, it's actually going to be fine. But like, you're really gonna struggle by not having proper anti-tank infantry. You're not gonna have proper tanks, and you don't have like a speed advantage to make up for that. Which Anzac might actually, on like D-Day or something, Anzac might not be too bad. Dutch German coalition should be pretty good with 4 2v4 cards and like 2v4 NLs on top of that. You get 2 cards of two good ATGM planes. Draken Tigers is very nice. Eastern Bloc, probably one of the weaker decks, like one of the weaker 8 here. Still good. Eurocore, again, more of a 1 vs 1 deck, especially with the nerfed Leclerc availability. The nerfed Peace Run availability hurts a lot in team games. A lot more in team games than in 1 vs 1s. Recon Tiger, not so much, but price nerf. But Leclerc nerf hits a lot. And LRM as well. LRM, of course, in 1 vs 1s as well. But LRM's Eurogans were like a staple in team games, right? To a certain extent in 1 vs 1s as well, but depending on pressure, etc., you might not buy this until like 20 minutes into the game, depending on how it goes. In team games, you might just straight up start with it, or like buy it like as your first buy, because you have to worry a lot less about some cheese or something happening, so you can afford to do that. East Germany definitely falls down, because while infantry is still very important, tanks become more important. Entente, honestly, is probably still S tier plum, and despite the nerf, still very good. You get the V-Horse, both of them are good, and the Moderna. Infantry is still very strong. Proletarian 90. Infantry AT becomes also a lot more important because of prevalence of heavier tanks. Anti-air is going to be amazing with Reneva M1T. Yeah. Finland, definitely going to fall down. Poland's going to really help with some stuff, namely the tanks and anti-tank planes. And the lag is going to be really noticeable. France as well. Israel probably S tier. Main disadvantage of them is speed and anti-helicopter power. Not as big of an issue in team games because speed is not typically not that important, or like is important, but your teammate cannot make up for it. Like to get key positions in the early game. Same with helicopters, or you can just spend more on AA, or you can afford to spend more on AA that you could otherwise. Japan though is probably gonna, I wouldn't say B tier, but definitely like high C tier. Those two, like those 6 Kiyomaros definitely can come into play here. Landshut, only one super heavy card, and it's probably gonna be still pretty good in 2v2s. 2v2 is probably like the ideal Landshut game, I reckon. Still low enough that no, you don't need that many super heavy tanks, but if you get like 3v3 or 4v4, that's where it's really gonna struggle. But I think 2v2 is probably the ideal game for Landshut. NATO, probably like very high A tier. Mech decks are, of course, still very, very strong in team games. Actually, no, it's probably still S tier. Just because of your air type. Yeah, it's still S tier. Mech decks are, of course, still amazing in team games. But, you know, sometimes people are like, Wargame, just super heavy meta. And super heavies are very, very good. But if you play, again, quote unquote normal team games, as good as super heavies are, you don't desperately need super heavies. Yes, heavier tanks are more useful in team games than in 1v1s, but like motor decks are certainly very, very viable still. You just gotta play proper 2v2s or 3v3s. But of course, if you go 4v4 with 4 motor decks on, I don't know, what's it called? Nuclear Winter is Coming? No, not Nuclear. World War Z or whatever, like very big open map. You're gonna have a tough time. Or you play same as like, you know, imagine playing an armor deck, 2 armor decks against 2 moto, 2 mech decks on D-Day, 2 infantry heavy decks, right? Then the armor decks are gonna struggle, right? North Korea, you get 3 T90s and 3 B5s, but that's about it. Hwasong Jungs aren't gonna be that great anymore. Your infantry is gonna struggle a bit, even though you're gonna be riding less on it. You have 3 T90s and 3 B5s, that's all you can do, North Korea. Yeah. Netherlands, probably low C tier. North, very, very high A tier. Maybe low S tier. US is amazing in team games, possibly better than in 1v1s. Unsure. Norway is gonna be pretty bad. Pact Mech is still amazing. Yeah, you still get M84As, which are really good and can really punch upwards against heavier tanks. And you still have like 27M, 25T if you want to do that jazz. Poland, I think Poland's gonna struggle without mortars. Mortars for your heavy tanks, because you're gonna have to rely on your heavy tanks with Poland, but it's basically all you have in team games. Your infantry is not gonna be particularly good, especially with your anti-tank infantry. Like all you have is RPG 7 VR, 24 AP, 525 meter range, 10 RPM, 50% accuracy. It's pretty bad for your best anti-tank on infantry. So you have to rely on your tanks, and if you want to rely on your tanks, you need proper smoke. Whether you like that mechanic or not, you need it. Red Dragons, Eternal C tier. Scandi, that's actually a tough one. I'm not sure if it's really that much better in team games. It's probably like low A tier. South Korea, probably D tier. South Africa, probably D tier. Gonna rank those, but Sweden actually C tier. Your infantry not being great, whatever, but you can like spam beacons and Amoses with your 3 like with their availability bonus, right? If you build a Swedish tank. Sweden. You get 3 beacons, like 5 Amoses, and like 3 beacon 1As. You get 2 FOBs. You can, especially in bigger team games where it's not that huge of a deal if like one. Oh, sorry, I forgot to. Let me show this again. Especially in bigger team games, where right here 3 per card, 5 per card, also 3 per card. In bigger team games where it doesn't matter as like 3 and 4 before, where it doesn't matter as much that one of your teammates might not have a proper front line, you can really just bomb the enemy, like artillery the enemy, shell the enemy into like oblivion. You don't get 4 challenger 2 per cards anymore. But like the slowness of the deck is not as big of a deal. Like it generally can actually, with all the challengers it has, hold up fairly well. With acceptable infantry-based AT with law 80. It's kind of lacking AP a bit for team games, but you have solid heavy tanks. You have good AA, you have some pretty good planes with high ECM. It can actually hold its own quite well. US might actually be this one. Well, like Ontown is very good, but not the strongest team game, I would say. Could definitely be US. Longbow, Raven, and all that shit. When you can have teammates to suppress enemy AA even more, incredibly strong. And with the prevalence of AA and the ability to buy 2 Patriots very early, diving the longbow with Lazur much harder as well. Soviets also S tier. Yes, Eurogame got nerfed, but Buratino is still out there and very much usable in team games because you can a lot more consistently just keep using it at a single front line. So the advantage of the Jurgen being able to be used at multiple front lines or wherever you want, not as huge anymore. It's still an advantage, don't get me wrong. Yugoslavia might be stronger in team games. The availability bonus is actually going to be nice, like 4 Plamons or whatever. You probably get 4 Plamons, right? 10% availability. But if it's 10%, is it 10%? Or is it 15? 15? Oh, you still get only 3 Plamons, right? Yeah, you still only get 3. In that case, the availability bonus is not even that great. You get an additional probability 90, right? You get some more probability 90, but you don't get more Plamons. Although you might not even want 4 because they actually do eat supply. I guess you actually, but at the same time, in team games you rely less on the check stuff. I'd say the MiG-29 bomber isn't as huge anymore. The Heinz gonna be a bit tougher to deal with, right? Or like to make use of. But it's actually comparatively stronger, I'd say, in team games than it is in 1v1s. And West Germany should be too bad. You only get 1 2A5, but 2 2A4 is just not too bad. KWS is gonna be still amazing, of course. Ronins are great. And second sign are gonna be good. Your lack of like, yeah, it shouldn't be too bad. Honestly, I might put it in B tier. Okay, let's see. What's the worst here? Probably Canada. No, probably Anzac is gonna be okay. Poland's probably the strongest. Maybe South Africa. I wonder if South Africa can. I mean, in South Africa you do get logins, honestly. Just because you get logins and you have like really good AA, it's probably gonna put you in C tier actually. A decent artillery as well. Yeah, let's not shit too much on it. It's not that horrible, okay? South Korea is probably not the strongest deck here though. Or maybe it might be. You have solid tanks. Let's see. Definitely stronger than China. Finland probably also. You get a mod. You're still a very, very solid infantry. Honestly, probably B tier. You still have a very good infantry-based AT. Your tanks are gonna be pretty weak, but the infantry is very strong. You have Jurgen. Your AA is okay. Good ASS. A good supporting deck, honestly. It's not gonna like help all over the map, but like take a front line where you don't expect a push, make sure it's safe, and then over the rest of the game just support the rest of your teammates. What else? You don't get 3 Leclercs per card even in France national. You need 30% availability bonus, and they don't get that. Here, Jericho probably still 80 actually. You get Leclerc and 2A5. Still a very good AA tab. Milan of 3s, Eric's. Tigers. Yeah, it's not that bad in team games. Not like B is bad, but Baltic Front's probably gonna be a bit lower. That's Germany better than Commonwealth? Probably. We actually have some MLRS. Eastern Bloc. It's not that good in team games. Slavia might actually be better. And Commonwealth as well. I'm not sure about Uruguay being better than that though. And S tier, I would say Israel is probably stronger than that. And NATO falls a bit behind. Northern might actually still be like in here, honestly. See, Dutch German. Dutch Germany is just kind of slept on, but I think most people just don't like it that much because it's boring to play. It's just very boring. Not bad, but just boring. Also, look at that white line just perfectly. But I think you still get like more super heavies and like that amazing Pro 39 is Fiber 29. You get a Plamen, Never M1T. It's just really still a super Gundam. It's just so good. Might actually be S tier. It's just again the lack of Heinz, etc. Just not a big of a deal in team games. Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it like that. All right, that's my very quickly done team game tier list. Actually, hold on. Let's yeah. 1 vs 1 tier list, team game tier list. Let me know what you think. Again, this is done like less than 40 minutes, right? Don't read too much into that. I just did it because people are probably gonna watch it. People love tier lists. I love tier lists too. So yeah, let me know what you think, or don't. Flame me if you think I'm absolutely wrong. Go like, LMAO, he put that in S tier and that in B tier. What the fucking more? Whatever. Do it if you want, as long as you're at least not actually like properly insulting me or anything. I don't care. Do it. Eat your heart out. And yeah, hope you enjoyed it. And I'll hopefully see you next time. I don't know what I'm gonna upload next. Maybe I will actually play Wargame. Who knows? And yeah, until then, bye bye.